I have the privilege today of having a former client's mom here with me. And I didn't work with her personally. Another one of our neurodevelopmentalists worked with her, but I followed her story all um, through the time that they were working with us and seeing the amazing things that neurodevelopment did for their family. So I just want to welcome Lisa. So glad you're here.
Thank you. It's my honor to join you. Thank you.
So I think we were chatting about how long ago it's been since your daughter was on program with us.
Yep. Yes, it's been 9 years. We actually started in 2014-ish, the end of that year, after she
Okay.
graduated from high school.
Okay, so she was older. Tell us a little bit about what she was struggling with, what you were seeing, just a little bit of history about what was happening before program.
I'm I would be delighted to share that with you. Michelle is and has continued to be an outstanding student, and she worked very, very hard in high school. The challenge was that she wanted to go on to college. And it became very clear because she's not only a great student, but she's involved in things and, has a life outside of academics, that in order to accomplish that in college and work at that level, we really came to a point of just recognizing that you are either going to have to accommodate this or fix it, or you won't have a life. You just will not have
Mhm.
a life because you're going to have to work so hard to overcome the challenges. And it was a few months of discovery because we had a number of voices that were telling us there was only one option here. And it didn't really make sense to me that God would make it such that there was only one option, that the brain couldn't heal. So we went on a journey of discovery. But the first thing that had to happen was Michelle had to make a decision. Are you going to accommodate this? Or are you going to fix it? And
Mm.
she decided that she was going to pursue fixing it after she prayed about it.
Well, that's very interesting that you say that because, with teenagers especially, you really have to have some buy-in for neurodevelopment to make the change that it needs to make because there's some unusual things that you have to do. Sometimes it seems a little off, like, why would I be doing this particular thing? How would that help my brain? And oftentimes they just kind of balk at that. So I was very impressed with Michelle's tenacity to press forward.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting that you say that because it was a very honest conversation of saying, this is your life. We will support you whichever way you want to go. And she really did have to search and pray and say, what are you saying? What am I willing to commit to? Because she realized that she would be responsible for following through on a lot of it. I can support her and help her, encourage her, all of those kinds of things, but it would not primarily be my responsibility. It would be hers.
So you said you had to go on a journey to try to find, you seem to have one option. Was that only from the establishment? What was her, did she have a label? What
Well,
were
the
you thinking?
prevailing opinion was that she was going to have to get accommodations, right? She would have to go through psychological testing and I don't know all what else. And then we'd have to take that to her college and that she would have to get whatever accommodations were necessary so that she could, keep up with the workload and still have a life. At that point,
Mhm.
again, she was such a hard worker and a good student that there wasn't anything. I think honestly, Jan, if we had told people in college, I mean, in high school, what she was struggling with, they would have been very perplexed, right?
Mhm.
But that was just her work ethic and, the way that she did it. And I could see in her senior year that it was getting more and more challenging and there was just this
Mhm.
pressure. But she walked through it and graduated with stellar grades, but you could tell there was a cost.
Mhm. So did you have some testing done? Did they determine what the reason was for the struggles?
No, once Michelle prayed about it and made the decision to fix it, we decided that we weren't going to pursue that avenue at all. I mean, the only question at that point was, okay, God, what do we need to do to fix this? And that's when, really we went on a journey, and it was a few clicks and I found little giant steps. And just between the nature of the program and that God was centered in it, was part of the conversation, just felt like God said, yep, that's where you're going. So we made the phone call, and next thing you know, we're down there.
So just to clarify for everyone, we were Little Giant Steps for a long time, and then it's okay. We just after Michelle was on program, we changed our name to Brain Sprints. So just to note for everybody to know, it's the same program, just a different name. Would you say it was just like everything was just hard for her? It was she had trouble reading, she had trouble comprehending. What were the major issues?
The major issues were reading and then, of course, comprehension, right? So having to read things over and over again. And the thing that we would notice is what would take, her peers an hour to do would take her 2 hours to do, right? And that
Mhm.
was the constant struggle of having to get a group of words and really comprehend what that meant. And that's once I saw that, that's when I said, sweetheart, you've got to do something, because at a college level, with the not just the complexity of the reading, but the amount of it,
Yes,
it would be overwhelming and frustrating. So something had
sure.
to shift.
So it's interesting. So you found us on a website search.
Yep, that was it.
That to me and where our marketing was at the time, I would call that a miracle.
Well, we prayed and said, God, we know you can heal the brain. If you can mend a broken arm, right? To think that God couldn't provide for the healing of a brain, that just made no sense to me. So we asked, God, send us where we need to go.
Well, and you had quite a few sacrifices too, right? You had to come from a very long distance.
Mhm. Yeah, we live in Minnesota, still live in Minnesota. So yeah, it was a plane ride down, and fortunately the Dallas Fort Worth area is kind of like a home to me. We lived there before all the kids were born. So it wasn't a strange neighborhood to me. It was a good place to go back to anyway. But yeah, it was a plane, right? A plane trip. And I have to tell you, you all were just fabulous working with us, knowing that we were long distance, right? And couldn't come in there all the time, and working with us to find something where to determine when we needed to come in and do this face to face versus what could be done, say, over the phone or with camera, video, that kind of thing.
Well, thank you. We try to really be sensitive to travel time, travel costs, all those kind of things for families. We do a lot of Zoom
Right.
consultations now as well. And as we prepared you with a program, you took that home, and then what kind of things were you seeing?
It's so fun. I went back and looked at the testimony I wrote up, and the very first thing we noticed was actually in her hockey game. We didn't notice right away in reading. So Michelle was always a very good hockey player. She's a defender. And one of the hallmarks of a good hockey player defenseman is to know when to switch over into offensive mode, when to take the chance and go on offense. And you have to make a split decision, right? Read the situation and make a split decision. And really, I went back and looked at my notes. We were probably only about 3 weeks into it. And my husband and I were watching Michelle in a hockey game, and we kept turning to each other going, did you just see her do that? Did you see her do that? And it was like all of a sudden things were clicking faster. And then it was a couple of weeks after that that we noticed that she was reporting reading wasn't as hard anymore. And then the magic moment came not shortly after that, where she said, I actually think I might like reading again, which was music to my ears, because way back in 5th grade, she had liked reading. I mean, that's something she and her grandmother shared a close affinity for. Um, they'd go to the store and remember the old Magic Tree House books, right? So I think she got the whole collection from her grandmother. So it was part of her life, but something happened. And it all fell away. But that day when she said, I think I like reading again, I'm going to spend some time on my own reading. Like, wow.
Wow, that's exciting. That is very exciting. Some children that are really, really smart, they are able to cope and compensate up to a certain point,
Yeah.
and nobody even realizes that there's something going wrong, or that it's not as easy for them as everybody else. And then they just kind of hit the wall of being able to compensate. And then it's all kind of downhill from there. And it often affects their self-esteem as well. I don't know if that was happening in Michelle's case or not.
You know what, Jan? I'm so grateful that you mentioned that because I'm just recognizing and saying thank you, God, because I think that's kind of what I was sensing, that before she actually hit the wall, that she was going to hit a wall and that we could do something before she hit it. And what you mentioned about the confidence, that was the fourth thing when I went back and looked at my notes that we noticed is that overall, I described how she became a more confident hockey player, knowing when to take the risk and go. But overall, there was an overall sense of just personal confidence that came. That was probably the fourth thing that we noticed in the sequence of what we
Mhm.
observed as we walked through it.
Well, that's exciting. So I know that it's been about 9 years ago. Are
Mhm.
you seeing that same thing now? I mean, has it lasted?
It has lasted, thank you, God. So the interesting time frame about Michelle, she had, before we made this decision, or before she made this decision to do that, she had already decided to take a gap year between high school and college. She was very interested in becoming a French major and wanted to gain fluency in French, or head down that pathway anyway, before she went off to college. So she took a gap year in between, which was really a huge blessing, of course, when we came to do the Brain Sprints program, because she was still here, right? She was still here in
Mm.
Minnesota. But the program went longer. It was about 18 months that she was in the entire program. And so when she went off to college, she was still doing the Brain Sprints program at college. And thank you, God, he gave her a dorm with a basement and a chapel in it so she could go down at 6:30 in the morning and do all the things that she needed to do right in her building. But she finished the program in that first year and a half of college, then went on to graduate college with high honors, got her major in French. Actually, she picked up 4 minors as well, and has gone on and I don't think ever looked back. I mean, we never heard anything more. She's become an avid reader, right? Getting books and now having to sort through and saying, okay, well, I'm going to let those go. But the challenge of reading, she never spoke of again. And I got to tell you, I'm just going to give you a testimony of this. There was a philosophy course that she took, and I was trying to help her edit a paper with it. And I'm looking at what she had to comprehend it, right? Go back to reading comprehension, right? This is philosophical. So it's kind of, unless your mind thinks that way anyway, it's hard, right? Just in
Yes.
general, because the nature of the subject, I'm like, oh my gosh, you are really actually comprehending this. You're going way beyond what I could get. But anyway, so yes, it lasted, it stayed. She enjoys reading and I don't think has ever looked back or complained again.
So I think I've heard that she's in a managerial role
Mhm.
in her job. So it even helped with those kind of skills.
Right. Well, and that thing of being able to read situations, right? And read
Mm.
people. And then, of course, just, having the confidence, right, to step into it. And that's another, speaking of the confidence piece, that was a huge challenge for her before, is because when you're up against that, you almost become afraid to make a mistake, right? Because
Mhm.
honestly, mistakes can become really costly in terms of having to redo, or if you can't read the situation or you're not at peace with yourself. But when you're more confident and more at peace with yourself, then you're willing to take more risks and be okay with, all right, that didn't go so well, and I can recover from that and move on. So yes, I believe that's absolutely accurate in terms of being able to read situations and read people so that you can really be helpful.
Yeah, that's very interesting because part of the neurodevelopmental approach, well, the whole of the neurodevelopmental approach actually is that it addresses all the different areas of the brain, not just one area, but like for instance, seeing the big picture and making good decisions and that kind of thing comes from a number of things. One, having an organized brain, which comes through our movements that we do, but also through auditory processing, which helps you to hold more pieces of information together, make a judgment about that, and then make a better decision. So it's interesting how sometimes you enter with a particular goal, like I want her to read better, and then you realize, oh, there's all these other benefits that have come from this kind of approach.
Well, and I think the example I gave you of the hockey thing, that's where we noticed it first. That was definitely unexpected. That wasn't even on the radar. That I didn't even think there was an issue, right? It wasn't a problem. It was just a nice to have. Wow, look at her. She's excelling in another place.
Yes, that's so great. Well, is there anything that you'd like to share with moms of maybe teenagers or just anyone that has a child that's struggling and um, any words of encouragement that you might have for them?
What I would say is, especially for somebody, right, that's was Michelle's age, right, in high school or going into college, what you mentioned, Jan, earlier about really having the conversation and just putting it squarely on the table, right? This is what we're seeing. This is a reality of what you're experiencing. These are options that you have to do it. And, we had to be really real about it's going to take your time. It is going to take some time. It is going to take effort. You will have to commit to it. And so at this age group, I'm just going to echo back what you said is about, the buy-in, right? Because this really was hers at the end of the day. And I became the coach, right? I became the driver and the coach. You have to be that coach anyway and encourage her anyway, but it's obviously a lot different when you're talking with a young child versus an older child. But I got to tell you, it was so worth it. It was so worth it, right? Just like, okay, great. Yes, the reading improved and that made life easier. But the overall, right, the lifelong things now 10 years after that she just feels. I remember a day, I think that she said, I just feel like more whole, like more me, like
Mhm.
all me, right? That's lifelong importance. That's not just, I got to get through college kind of thing, right? Because you could just say, okay, well, I'll forgo college and reading isn't that necessary? I can get by, all that kind of stuff. But all of the unexpected pieces of the confidence and feeling more whole and feeling more centered, that's, I mean, that's priceless in my opinion. This is priceless.
It was, thank you so much for sharing. This was such a pleasure, and it's always very humbling for me to see the effects of something that God has shown me that I can show parents. And as they do it, like you and Michelle were diligent and you did it. It's not a magic pill. Wish I had one of those, but if you do it, you really do get results. So thank you so much for sharing that. I know it's going to encourage someone.
Well, it's my honor. Um, yeah, it's my honor because I thought, wow, think of the people that if they had just known, right? If they had just known that this was even possible. And, can I just add one more thing to this?
Absolutely.
There was joy in the journey. I don't want to leave people with the impression, right, that, this was like, crack the whip and you got to do this. I mean, there were times, right, where you have to just push through it and go, yeah, I got to do it. But, if you can learn to laugh through it and go, okay, well, this was not such the best day. And all right, well, we're just going to put that one aside and move on. And I got to say to you, Jan, that was something that I feel like your staff contributed to, right? Of recognizing that, they're good days and bad days. And there, you can laugh through some of this stuff when it doesn't go right. I mean, that made all of this work a whole lot better for us, and most importantly for Michelle. So I have to really thank you for just recognizing that and entering into a joy journey with us.
Oh, that's so great. Well, thanks again for being here.
It's my honor.